I have sent for thee, holy friar, but 'twas not with the drunken hope, which is but agony of desire. To shun the fate with which to cope is more than crime may dare to dream. That I have called thee at this hour, such father is not my theme, nor am I mad to deem that power of earth may shrive me of the sin unearthly pride hath revelled in. I would not call thee fool, old man, but hope is not a gift of thine. If I can hope, O God, I can, it falls from an eternal shrine. Good evening, Poe fans, and welcome back to one of our degree episodes. And as you can see on Jeannie's screen and the picture behind me, we are going to be talking about what writer, Jeannie?
That would be a Lord Byron.
Yes, and just remind everybody, this is kind of a part 2 to Lord Byron, but we're going to be a little bit more specific. Back January 7th, 2025 in season 4, we had an episode where we really delved into Byron the person and his actual life history, but this one is going to focus more on his poetry. And so that episode that we did back in January, a little over a year ago, is called Poe Before Poe Became Poe. So check it out.
Yes. So it kind of gives you more of an in-depth of the personal life of Lord Byron,
Yes.
and not so much about his works and how they may have influenced Poe's works along the way. So this time we're going to look at some specific things about the poetry that Lord Byron put out.
Yes.
Now, for those that may not know, Lord Byron was from 1788 to 1824. So he died pretty much when Poe would have been
15?
hold on, 15. Yeah, 15.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was 15 when Lord Byron died. But he became an English poet that was famous for his works of fiction, specifically his poetry.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people remember him also because he had a very scandalous personal life, which that's what we talked about last year.
Exactly.
This year we're going to discuss a little bit more about some of the things that are similar.
Thought you were going for similarities.
Apparently I was wanting to, but then I stopped halfway between there. So
okay.
We're going to talk some similarities. That's where I was trying to go. With Poe's works to what Byron had in his works, especially the Byronic Hero.
Yes.
Now, we all have talked about or know about archetypes, especially if we like to watch like superhero shows or read comic books or anything like that, because you have the archetypes of the heroes, the villains, all those different types of things, the anti-hero, Deadpool comes to mind. But the Byronic Hero was all about how Lord Byron wrote his characters, his fictional characters. They were moody, brooding rebels, often haunted by dark secret from the past, and usually was a type of main character that Lord Byron kind of maybe stuck his own type of personality into.
I could see that.
Yeah, especially all the stuff that he was going through in his own life, especially the melancholy, the rebellious young man, because he was definitely rebellious in his own life. He would go against what everybody else thought about what he should do, and distressed by something maybe he wrongly did in his past.
Okay.
So that's kind of what the Byronic Hero is applied, and it's traditionally applied just to the male characters. Now, it can be applied in later generations to some of the more female characters. But for the most part, it's all it's all about the male characters.
Mm-hmm.
And so Lord Byron, he loved to write these type of central characters in his works. And it's okay because he was a classic bad boy himself.
Absolutely.
And what better way to know that, write what you know? And
Exactly.
so the
And
first character, oh, sorry, go ahead.
well, I was going to say, just wanted to interject about what you said. You said brooding, rebel. What was the first
Mhm.
word you said before brooding? Melancholy.
Oh, melancholy, yeah,
Yes, and when you really think about the what Griswold painted as Poe, that's kind of what everyone thinks of him before they actually get to know the real Poe. And just wanted to point that out. It's like, did Griswold kind of borrow from Byron, knowing Poe was highly influenced by him, to kind of create that persona that we know is incorrect?
exactly, because there's many in the histories of the writing that they have applied as Byronic heroes, even in the
Mm-hmm.
early times before Byron started writing. They've gone back and they've started attaching names or the Byronic hero name to certain
Mm-hmm.
characters. For example, Hamlet from
Oh,
Shakespeare.
absolutely. Mm-hmm.
I mean, he would be considered a Byronic hero, but Shakespeare was in like the 1500s. So,
Right. So that, yeah,
and
that would mean that it would be Byronic, and I'm playing on
exactly,
the ironic before Byron.
exactly. Yeah. And another thing is that most of the Byronic hero characters have some particular traits that have been characterized along the lines of being angry, rebellious,
Mm-hmm.
seductive, struggling with vices, high intelligence, emotional awareness, causing them to brood and be outsiders from society.
Mm-hmm.
So all these things some pretty much are major things that we see in today's characters. I can think
Yes.
of a few. Star Wars comes to mind,
Yeah.
considering yesterday was May the Fourth be with you, and today is Revenge of the Fifth. So,
Yes.
so, and I mean, and that's the thing. But one thing that a lot of people have kind of talked about as Poe being influenced was his first poem that he published, Tamerlane.
Yes, which I read from on the introduction. That's the very first stanza of Tamerlane.
Exactly. And and another thing that we were discussing is that most of the time with Poe, when we talk about Poe, most of his stories and his poems, he doesn't really start with a beginning or an ending. He's kind of open-ended.
Yes.
But as we were
Yes.
talking, just like, well, Tamerlane, it kind of reminds me of the Child's Herald. Peer,
Pilgrimage. Yes.
thank you. It's
Yes.
like all of a
And
sudden I couldn't get the out.
absolutely.
Because it had so many stanzas, but it actually was like a pilgrimage. Tamerlane, it has a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Absolutely. And Tamerlane was published in 1827, and
Mhm.
Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, which I- honestly, Jeannie, I think it's probably a good time for me to read part of it now since we're talking about it. It was published, I wrote it down, between 1812 and 1818, and it was basically, it took that long to publish it because it was in four different parts, which are cantos, and that's how Byron published it. And so
Yeah.
that's why it was over that course of that many years.
And it also to point out that this is one of his poems towards the end of his life, but it was like the very one of the very first things at the beginning of Poe's.
Right, exactly. Well, I'm only going to read a couple of stanzas because, again, with the four parts, it's very, very long. I
Mhm.
think it's longer than Tamerlane. And so I'm just going to read a couple of stanzas from the first canto, or actually, it's actually just the first part to Ianthe. And are you ready for me to read, Jeannie?
Yep, go right ahead.
Okay, here we go. Not in those climes where I have late been straying, thou beauty long hath there been matchless deemed. Not in those visions to the heart displaying forms which it sighs but to have only dreamed. Hath aught like thee in truth or fancy seemed? Nor, having seen thee, shall I vainly seek to paint those charms which varied as they beamed. To such as see thee not my words were weak. To those who gaze on thee, what language could they speak? Ah, mayest thou ever be what now thou art, nor unbesom the promise of thy spring, as fair in form as warm yet pure in heart, love's image upon earth without his wing, and guileless beyond hope's imagining. And surely she who now so fondly rears thy youth in thee, thus hourly brightening, beholds the rainbow of her future years before whose heavenly hues all sorrow disappears. That was the
Nice.
first two stanzas.
Cool.
And you can definitely kind of think about some of Poe's works and just kind of a little bit of a
Mm,
similarity here and there with the cadence, some of the words that were chosen, and things like that.
yeah. And I mean, Byron always had such a lyrical way about his
Yes,
writing that you can feel the cadence, but you also can feel the emotion in what he wrote.
yes.
So, and that one is a journey. You can tell from the very beginning, it's a journey.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the thing I really like is that so in this first part to Ianthe, there are five stanzas. The first stanza ends with the question, to those who gaze on thee, what language could they speak? And then the last stanza of To Ianthe also ends in a question, thou more than hope can claim, could friendship less require? So I think again, like you said, it's a journey, and when you're putting out those questions within the poems, it really is it's like, is it rhetorical or is he really looking to seek an answer to what he's asking?
Exactly. And that just so much what Byron was. He was
Mm-hmm.
always, they described him as being a playboy, which in a way
Yeah.
he was, because he never hid so much of what he was.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but a lot of that he made a point of everybody going, look, this is me. But at the same time, he hid a lot of emotion, especially about who he dealt with, who he was around. He
Mm-hmm.
felt very strongly about the people that he befriended
Right.
and knew about. So, and that's why a lot of his writing, it goes along with things that happened in his real life,
Mm-hmm.
that you kind of feel his emotion in the writing. And that goes along with Poe. We've always talked about how Poe uses his works as a way of trying to deal with things that may be happening in his life.
Yeah.
Uh, and how his critiques, how he felt, like when he left the University of Virginia, because they believe this was where he left the University of Virginia or got kicked out, whichever you want to say.
Yeah.
We'll say he left. And then that's the point where he ended up in Boston. And then that's when, correct me if I get these mixed up, because his timeline always misses me sometimes.
Uh-huh.
He ends up in Boston, and that's where he publishes Tamerlane and the other poems.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that point that he also enlists into the army and lies about his age.
Right. Exactly. Yes.
Okay, so this also tells me that Poe is trying to hide his own feelings, and so he's running, and he ends up running to places that, because we know we've heard the stories and read the stories that Boston was not his favorite town by any means.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so he went to the one place that I guess he thought that maybe John Allen wouldn't find him.
That's true. Yeah, that's very true. Kind of like, why would he go back there?
Yeah, and then he ended up enlisting in the military, and then he got sent to Charleston.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of like how he, and to me, that's where Poe, he was the foster son of a rich man,
Mm-hmm.
and Lord Byron was a rich man.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
and that's where Byron used that wealth to go and do and experience things, but because of his flamboyance of things that weren't considered well received, shall we
Hmm.
say,
Right.
he just like Poe, he was always running to something and trying to get away from something, in my opinion,
Yeah.
because even Byron ended up in America.
Okay.
Yeah. Or was it Toronto?
I don't recall.
Yeah, it was one of those things. I can't remember. I think he started in Canada and then ended up in America at one point, maybe. Or I might be getting him confused with somebody else because we've talked a lot about a lot of, oh, wait a minute. Nope, I think we're talking about somebody else. Sorry,
Yeah,
scratch that.
you are thinking of someone else. He did not travel to
Right.
America or
I
Canada.
think I was thinking of maybe Lovecraft. Um,
Well,
or somebody that we talked.
Lovecraft is from like he lived in Rhode Island. So,
Okay. Well,
yeah.
anyway,
I
we've
don't know
talked
who
about
you're
a lot of
talking about.
different. Anyway, it'll come to me years from now probably.
Oh yeah. Oh
But
yeah.
but one of the things that I was trying to get across is that Byron did travel. He did go hang out with quite a few people.
Right. In
Um,
throughout Europe, absolutely.
exactly. And like the poem that the one of the poems, the first poem I'm going to read from Lord Byron is called When We Two Parted.
Hmm.
And it was published in Byron's 1816 collection. And but he backdated it to 1808 as hopefully a misdirection, according to the research, to help shield the poem's subject, Lady Frances Wedderburn Webster,
Oh,
who was a
interesting.
married woman with whom he had carried on a charged but apparently unconsummated flirtation with.
Okay.
And I think one of the things he was trying to do is because Lady Frances ended up becoming entangled in a public scandal with the Duke of Wellington.
Oh, okay.
And Byron used this poem as a way to show his private grief
Hmm.
into a bitter public showing of what she's having to face.
Oh, wow.
And so that was one of the things that, because this to me also shows how Poe's attachment to certain women, like Morella, Annabel Lee, Ligeia, all the different women that Poe writes about.
Right.
And then Byron himself using this as a way to express how he was feeling about Lady Frances and what she might have been going through.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm going to lead into. I'm going to take this moment to read When We Two Parted.
All right. I have not heard this one, I don't think.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've heard it and read it. When we two parted in silence and tears, half broken hearted to sever for years, pale grew thy cheek and cold, colder thy kiss. Truly that hour foretold sorrow to this. The dew of the morning sunk chill on my brow. It felt like the warning of what I feel now. Thy vows are all broken, and light is thy fame. I hear thy name spoken, and share in its shame. They name thee before me, and nailed to mine ear. A shudder comes over me. Why wert thou so dear? They know not I knew thee, who knew thee so well. Long, long I shall rue thee, too deeply to tell. In secret we met, in silence I grieve, that thy heart could forget, thy spirit deceive. If I should meet thee after long years, how should I greet thee? With silence and tears.
Very nice.
And I mean, it's got so much, like I talked about, it's got so much emotion. And knowing a little bit of maybe some of the historical concept behind it,
Yeah.
about the intimate betrayals, the political, things that are going on at the time, and who it might be related to,
Mm-hmm.
it just made it more poignant, in my opinion, of
Yeah.
how
Oh, I
Byron
agree.
was expressing his sorrow and how he's being hurt because there is such hurt towards this person.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminded me of Annabel Lee, actually, the poem
Yeah,
Annabel Lee.
it does a little bit. Yeah.
Like the sepulchre by the sea was
Mm-hmm.
silence, silent in tears.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was one of the things that I thought was very poignant from Byron, and
Mm-hmm.
made such a attachment to the story of Annabel Lee, in that was when we two parted. And like with Annabel Lee, the kingdom by the sea, that they are parted themselves. So Poe is met with silence himself. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
but yeah, so that was one thing with when we two parted. Now, the other one that I was wanting to talk about, which is kind of ironic also, is something that goes along and was published around the same time. But I think we need, because what was the other one that you were going to do
The
of
one
Byron's?
that I'm
Yeah,
actually going to read, you mean?
yeah, that one you're
Yes.
actually going to read. We
Yes.
need to
She
discuss
walks
a
in
bit.
beauty.
Yes, she walks in beauty. So that kind of goes with what we're talking about,
Oh,
with
yeah.
the women that Poe and Byron, or just in general with Byron, the people that he met along the way and had some communications and some attachments to, but for political reasons or other reasons, things never worked out.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And just to remind everybody that, he was part of you had mentioned, he was tight knit with a few people, especially, and, he knew lots of people, but the tight group that he, in around 1816, that, he actually, I've lost my notes. Um, that he went with to it's called Villa Diodati near Geneva, Switzerland during the summer of 1816.
mm,
This group of, they were, romantic poets and writers, and they went there, Percy Bysshe Shelley, Mary Godwin, later Mary Shelley, and John Polidori.
mm-hmm,
And it was Byron who suggested the competition for who could come up with the best ghost story. And
yes,
so, to my knowledge, I think he did write something there, but it did not have the fame, obviously, that Frankenstein did. And, but John Polidori, who was actually Byron's actual physician, his doctor, He wrote The Vampire, and that's the vampire with the Pyre, not the Pire spelling. He wrote that
Exactly.
during that time frame. So I thought it's kind of interesting that even though Byron did not necessarily write something in the like horror genre, even though it was the genre had not
Hold
been
that thought though, because
do
that's
what?
what that was lead. Hold that thought. That's what's
Okay.
leading into what I'm doing.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
why I was bringing up because you're actually talking about what my next poem for Byron is.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, then I will
Because
be quiet and let you continue.
because that was the thing. The poem that I was going to talk about with Byron is Darkness, and it
Okay.
was in 1816, and it was written while they were in Lake Geneva, Switzerland.
Okay. So that was during that time frame.
Yes,
Okay.
it
All right.
was. This was his contribution uh, during that time. I don't know if he was in competition with them as trying to the best ghost story,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a post-apocalyptic story that is writing for Byron, talking about desolation and people setting forests on fire, and talking about famine. So this is kind of like what his contribution was to that time.
Okay.
And this is one of my favorite times because, like you said, this is when Mary Shelley, penned Prometheus, otherwise known as Frankenstein,
Mm-hmm.
and Polidori wrote The Vampire or
Mm-hmm.
Vampire, spelled with a
I've
Y.
heard it pronounced both ways.
Yeah, I mean, it's just basically according to what part of the world and who you're talking to, the way it's
Yeah.
pronounced.
Yeah, because it
So,
is one of the earliest vampire stories.
exactly. And actually this one it's long, but it's not long like the Child's Herald pilgrimage.
Mm-hmm.
But it does have more darkness in it than what you usually hear.
Yes,
Considering it's called Darkness.
exactly.
So, without further ado, here we go.
All right.
I had a dream, which was not at all a dream. The bright sun was extinguished, and the stars did wander darkling in the eternal space, rayless and pathless, and the icy earth swung blind and blackening in the moonless air. Morn came and brought no day. And men forgot their passions in the dread of this their desolation, and all hearts were chilled into a selfish prayer for light. And they did live by watchfires and the thrones, the palaces of crowned kings, the huts, the habitations of all things which dwell, were burnt for beacons, cities were consumed, and men were gathered round their blazing homes, to look once more into each other's face. Happy were those who dwelt within the eye of the volcanoes and their mountain torch. A fearful hope was all the world contained. Forests were set on fire, but hour by hour they fell and faded, and the crackling trunks extinguished with a crash, and all was black. The brows of men by the despairing light wore an unearthly aspect, as by fits the flashes fell upon them. Some lay down, and hid their eyes and wept, and some did rest, their chins upon their clenched hands, and smiled. And others hurried to and fro, and fed their funeral piles with fuel, and looked up with mad disquietude on the dull sky, the pall of the past world, and then again with curses cast them down upon the dust, and gnashed their teeth and howled. The wild birds shrieked, and terrified did flutter on the ground, and flap their useless wings. The wildest brutes came tame and tremulous, and vipers crawled and twinned themselves among the multitude. Hissing but stingless, they were slain for food, and war, which for a moment was no more, did glut himself again. A meal was bought with blood, and each sate sullenly apart, gorging himself in gloom. No love was left. All earth was but one thought, and that was death, immediate and inglorious, and the pang of famine fed upon entrails. Men died, and their bones were tombless as their flesh. The meagre by the meagre were devoured. Even dogs assailed their masters, all save one, and he was faithful to a course, and kept the birds and beasts and famished men at bay, till hunger clung them, or the dropping dead lured their lank jaws, himself sought out no food, but with a piteous and perpetual moan, and a quick desolate cry, licking the hand which answered not with a caress, he died. The crowd was famished by degrees, but two of an enormous city did survive, and they were enemies. They met beside the dying embers of an altar place, where had been heaped a mass of holy things for an unholy usage they racked up, and the shivering scraped with their cold skeleton hands. The feeble ashes and their feeble breath blew for a little life, and made a flame, which was a mockery. Then they lifted up their eyes as it grew lighter, and beheld, with others' aspects, saw, and shrieked, and died. Even of their mutual hideousness they died, unknowing who he was upon whose brow famine had written fiend. The world was void. The populous and the powerful was a lump, seasonless, herbless, treeless, manless, lifeless, a lump of death, a chaos of hard clay. The rivers, lakes, and ocean all stood still, and nothing stirred within their silent depths. Ships sailorless lay rotting on the sea, and their masts fell down piecemeal as they dropped. They slept on the abyss without a surge. The waves were dead, the tides were in their grave. The moon, their mistress, had expired before. The winds were withered in the stagnant air, and the clouds perished. Darkness had no need of aid from them. She was the universe.
That's an incredible poem.
Exactly.
And he loves alliteration.
Yes, he did. And it
In a
was
good way.
used
You know,
perfectly.
yes, there's so many lines that contain it. It's just it's awesome. The very first line, I had a dream which was not all a dream. It
Uh-huh.
makes me totally think of Dream Within a Dream from Poe.
It did me too. When I first read it, I was like, oh, yes.
Yeah, but to me, this is a much darker poem than Dream Within a Dream.
Oh, yes. And he meant it to be that way because that was during that time when they were supposed to be writing the best
Ghost
ghost
stories.
story.
Yes.
And he wrote a poem about the apocalypse, about how everything was gone and everybody was either dead or dying or killing each other off and trying to save each other. And I love how he interjected how the dogs turned on their masters except for one
Mm-hmm.
who laid down and died beside him, refusing to eat just to survive.
Yeah. I also like at the very end with the part, let's see, darkness had no need of aid from them. She was the universe. And
Exactly.
it's personifying the darkness was incredible. And then just kind of explaining it in that last line, she was the universe. And it just
Hmm.
rolls all up nicely into a ball.
Yeah, it was. I mean, putting it against like Frankenstein and the vampire, you can tell how it didn't quite fit in because
Mm-hmm.
his monster turned out to be the people
Yes.
in the story as a whole and not the other way around.
Yeah.
Whereas in Mary Shelley, she had Frankenstein, uh, not the monster, but Frankenstein, the doctor, as the monster who created the monster.
Mm-hmm. I
So,
know.
and
I
that kind of
know.
fits with what Byron wrote because, in essence, the monster was the death of everything, and
Yeah.
it was perpetuated by human hand, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very ironic how he wrote it versus how they wrote it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I love both of them. I think this one is by far one of my favorite of Byron's.
Mm-hmm. It's really good.
Hmm. And it reminds me the most of some of Poe's works, like The Telltale Heart.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of comes to mind, and The Fall of House of Usher, The Black Cat, things like that. The Cask of Amontillado. I mean, it's not so much apocalyptic, it's more about the darkness itself, whether the darkness in a person
Yeah.
coming out. So, but yeah. And then you have Byron who writes something uh like what you're about to read and talk about
Mm-hmm.
that come from the same time as he wrote this. So, it's kind of ironic or Byronic.
But not bionic, as in the $6 million
Yes,
dollar man.
exactly. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, no.
We had to,
Bionic and Byronic are not the same.
no, and we had to bring that out because we kept saying that.
Exactly. Because, I
Oh,
mean, you can't say Byronic and not think of Bionic Man,
absolutely.
especially when you're talking about Byronic heroes.
Yes, exactly. Oh, goodness. So, okay, so I guess it's my turn to read
Mm-hmm.
the last poem that we're going to share. And so this poem is absolutely beautiful in my opinion, and it was published June 12th, 1814, and it's She Walks in Beauty. And it basically was Byron attending a party,
Mm-hmm.
and his first cousin, Anne Beatrix Wilmot, was attending this party. It was in London. And the thing that captivated Byron the most was she was in mourning. And the dress she had on was solid black, as all mourning wear pretty much was, unless it was like a dark gray. But it had like some sparkly kind of spangled things on the dress. And so it brought out kind of that dark to light kind of imagery and theme. And so the silvery spangles that kind of were adorning the dress made him kind of think of like a starry night. And so it gave him the inspiration to write this poem. And so without further ado, she walks in beauty. She walks in beauty like the night of cloudless climes and starry skies, and all that's best of dark and bright meet in her aspect and her eyes. Thus mellowed to that tender light which heaven to gaudy day denies. One shade the more, one ray the less, had half impaired the nameless grace which waves in every raven tress, or softly lightens o'er her face, where thoughts serenely sweet express how pure, how dear their dwelling place. And on that cheek and o'er that brow, so soft, so calm, yet eloquent, the smiles that win, the tints that glow, but tell of days and goodness spent, a mind at peace with all below, a heart whose love is innocent. The other part of this, with what inspired him, when especially in the second stanza, it's talking about just her inner beauty. It's not just the outward beauty, but she encapsulates the whole picture of a beautiful woman inside and out.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell definitely from that poem how he feels about her as he's writing
Mm-hmm.
and expressing about how she is the epitome of beauty,
Mm-hmm.
but not just a picture of beauty. She
Right.
is beauty
Yeah.
inside and out. And I love how he uses raven tresses.
I know. I know. I love that.
I'm like, whoop, there we go. There's another Poe.
Yeah.
Which,
And
and if you think about it, the raven itself it's so black that it has that illustrious luminous of the blue black
mm-hmm.
to it that it's just so special.
Yeah, that iridescent kind of quality that comes out, like you said, with the blue, those blues and
Hmm.
even hints of purple when the light just hits the feathers just right.
Oh
And yes,
yeah.
I rhymed on purpose.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean that's the other thing. I mean, he includes in the poem, and that makes you bring out, just like Poe always did, he brings out things that you don't normally think about, you
Mm-hmm.
know, or would attach to something,
Yeah.
you know. And just as his description, you can imagine that she's standing there in this beautiful black dress, but the
Mm-hmm.
black dress itself is representation of something that is sorrowful,
Exactly. Yeah.
but beautiful in its sorrow.
Yeah. It's really kind of an oxymoron if you think about it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And Poe is all about that too. He uses that in
Mm-hmm.
a lot of his writing. And
Absolutely.
so,
I think Poe got some really good inspiration from Byron, in my
oh,
opinion.
absolutely. I mean, he he had to have read him and just attached part of his life to the feeling that Byron has in his work.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can feel how Byron has got that melancholy, and whether it's in himself that he's writing or things that are happening that he's experiencing, you can feel his melancholy. You can feel his missed opportunity.
Yes.
And that's a lot like what Poe was probably searching for
Mm-hmm.
was he was growing. I mean, like we talked about, he was 15 when Byron died.
Mm-hmm.
So he was having studies, so he was probably studying Byron.
Oh, absolutely. You know he was.
Yes, and so I would absolutely have to say that Poe used Byron to not only lose himself and look for someone of a what am I thinking here? Looking for someone to a kindred spirit, I guess is what I'm trying to
Yes.
get
I,
to.
I think yeah, I think you're right. Yeah,
He
they
was
they
searching for someone to recognize, or he can recognize himself in, and he found it, in my opinion, with
hmm
Byron.
yes. And that we know of, Lord Byron is one of the influences on Poe. There's not a whole lot out there of other people. I know that there are, but it's very few.
Hmm.
And Lord Byron is the one that sticks out the most of the influence of Poe. And just it's so incredible to think about this one man had the influence on Edgar, and think about how many more influences Poe has had on so many other people. It's
Exactly.
just mind-boggling. It's like it's like
Now,
Byron created his monster.
yes,
In a
Well,
good
and
way,
then,
a good monster.
yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. It doesn't matter, just like in Frankenstein, the scary put together, piece by piece looking visual monster wasn't the true monster.
Right.
And that's kind of like what it feels when you read some of the writing, like with Poe in the Cask of Amontillado, especially. Who is truly the monster in the story?
Right.
Is it Montresor or is it Fortunato?
Yeah.
It's according to how whoever's reading it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some people kind of have their own kind of opinion about how Byron was not that much of an influence on Poe, but
Right.
I don't. I can see how they might think that, but in some instances, it's like you could say the same thing about what we're doing, about how we're saying all the Poe influences
Mm-hmm.
on people.
Yeah.
And everybody's got their own vision.
Yes.
But I mean, like when I just read Darkness, I mean that that to me is like pulling Poe in, right there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if Poe read that, I can see him getting inspired by it.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is, Poe, Poe was accused of like, plagiarizing a few
Mm-hmm.
times. And it's like, no, he didn't. And he was very against people stealing anyone's work, with, fighting for copyright laws and things like that. And you can tell that he is paying homage to Byron in some of his works. And it's not at all a plagiarism.
No. And I think that Poe saw the genius of Byron in his writing, but also saw the struggles that he had in his real life and
Hmm.
how he identified with it. So,
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, Poe had his own struggles, Byron had his own struggles, and they were very different.
yes, and it just tortured writer comes to my mind every time I think of Byron and Poe. So,
Hmm. Yeah.
but I think the Byronic Hero is, a Poe a Poe Byron masterpiece.
Poronic.
It's a Pyronic masterpiece right there.
Oh,
That's right. That's the way
yeah.
it goes.
Yeah, and I mean, and just the Byronic hero still exists today in some modern works too. And
Oh yeah.
so, yeah, Byron's influence is still seen today, just as Poe's influence is seen today.
Yeah, and the one thing that pops into my head right now is the movie that's coming out with the Mandalorian and Grogu. I mean, the
Hmm.
Mandalorian would be the perfect Byronic hero.
Yeah,
And so the archetype is still there. It may have changed names,
right.
but the archetype is in existence in today's world. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
mhm. Well, I
I'm
think
waiting.
we
I'm
have
waiting for the $6 million man music, the
dun
slow
dun dun dun
motion.
dun 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 dun. Yes.
Oh,
That would work. I think, $6 million man. He was a Byronic and bionic hero.
yes.
Um, well, I think we have reached our Byron quota.
I believe we have, definitely.
And on that note,
We
our
are
Oh,
Poed
wow.
out.
I reached my home no more, for all was flown that made it so. I passed from out its mossy door in vacant idleness of woe. There met me on its threshold stone a mountain hunter I had known, in childhood, but he knew me not. Something he spoke of the old cot. It had seen better days, he said. There rose a fountain once, and there full many a fair flower raised its head. But she who reared them was long dead, and in such follies had no part. What was there left me now? Despair, a kingdom for a broken heart.